more about our next topic, which is the new paradigm of data architectures. Again, we are going to talk about infrastructure, but we are looking at how data architectures and infrastructures need to be thought together and how they actually impact each other. We are talking about how companies are looking to come out with data or pipelines and create data journeys so that they can generate insights faster and build intelligence when it comes to decision making. Now, I'm not going to do this all on my own. I have three wise people who will be actually helping me and giving me the insights. Let me first introduce Asha Poulose Johnson, Vice President for Data Analytics from GE Healthcare. Then we will have Simon Lockington, Senior Director, Global Solutions Architect for Asia Pacific at Equinix. And lastly, we have Setu Nair, Hybrid Cloud Practice Lead at Accenture. Before I I'd like to move on into the panel discussion. I'd like to just again invite everyone to send in their questions. Please do participate. We want this to be an interacting and engagement session. You have the Q&A button. Please do press it, send in all the questions that you think or comes to your mind. Let me do the moderating and let me do the analysis so that I can then send those questions to our esteemed panelists. Now, let's start with our first primer question. And I always like to start with something that is a bit more broad, but actually sets the scene. And I will first start with Setu. We have been talking about compute-intensive workloads at the edge for real-time insights for AI. People are rethinking about their data architectures. It's no longer just one cloud infrastructure or having it on their side within their on-premises. They have to be everywhere. It needs to be at the edge. We're talking about autonomous vehicles where you need to have different areas where the car needs to be talking to the data centers or micro data centers. So what are the key insights and lessons that we have learned so far? What are the challenges that we are facing when it comes to building infrastructure to support data architectures?
Thanks, Vincent, for having me in this panel. Just a brief introduction. My name is Setu Nair. I'm a managing director and lead for the hybrid cloud practice for the Asia-Pac region for Accenture. And you raised a very pertinent question today. Just to put some context, today in 2022, we had more than around 18 billion IoT connected devices, generating data. And by 2025, that is expected to explode more than 31 billion devices. And according to IDC, that is supposed to generate over, 73 zettabytes. I don't even know how many zeros are there in that of data globally. And this gives a big challenge for our customers and enterprises of two things. How do they make meaningful insight of this data and to ensure which is the data, because looking at all this data, storing them, analyzing them is not practically possible, given the costs and other pressures involved. So today, a lot of these things has to happen at the edge. Some in their own data centers and some in the public cloud, and within public cloud, there could be SaaS providers like Snowflake, etc., doing it within their environment. So the most of our enterprise customers are today mandating a hybrid cloud as their end state of infrastructure. And with that, hybrid cloud, when we say hybrid cloud, it's multi-cloud, multiple public clouds or public, private, colo, own data center, etc., coming together to form an infrastructure. Now, the key challenge with this kind of a infrastructure landscape, Vincent, is that the traditional tools that the enterprises were using to manage the enterprises when everything was in the data center is no more applicable, because these tools are not able to go into the public cloud environments and mine the data insights of what is happening. To address that, of course, the public cloud providers provide their own tools like CloudWatch by Amazon or Sentinel from Microsoft, etc. But then this only do for their own cloud. So one of the key challenges for enterprises is once you have infrastructure spreading across all these different kinds of environment, how do you manage, operate, govern, and ensure that you are getting the right cost optimization or leveraging the best of the breed of what these platforms have to offer? And some of them have gone about adopting what you call, cloud agnostic tools like, Datadog and, there are many out there like Splunk, Docker, etc. to do it. But again, then these are all, addressing one specific aspect of the monitoring. Now, how do we integrate? And just to highlight, in Accenture, in my hybrid cloud practice, that is one of the key, issues we are addressing for enterprises is by, integrating all these tools along with our own IP around AI ops, etc., to build something called as a continuum control plane that can extend all the way from the edge into your data center across the cloud environments and give the enterprise a unified way of how they can manage, control, govern, and secure this environment, irrespective of, what kinds of assets they are having in the infrastructure, or, what different kinds of data they are governing. So I think this, how do you govern, manage, operate, and ensure you are having the right cost optimization is going to be the key challenge as we see more and more, data or infrastructure getting, pervasive across these various kinds of formats, according to me.
Thank you, Satu. And I think you just answered like 3 or 4 of my questions with that one answer, but that's really good points. I will be going through some of those points together.
Yeah, sure.
Asha, I just want to bring you into this discussion. There's 2 industries that actually transformed really quickly. One is banking during COVID. The other one is obviously healthcare, and you are right in the middle of it. But within your industry, within your organization itself, there will be demands to actually drive insights faster, getting closer to the data. But that's not necessarily the easiest thing to do when you're moving from a what do you call a legacy infrastructure to a more cloud-driven. So from your perspective, what are the lessons you have learned so far? What are the challenges that you are facing?
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question. Thank you for having me here, and hello, everybody. So, when you think about the healthcare industry, and, obviously everybody talks about the transformation that happened in the healthcare industry during COVID period, right? There are actually different types of data and different types of demand that gets placed on the data. And I think Setu kind of indicated that, right? So if I were to broadly classify it, right, then there are like typical med tech company has a lot of internal data. This is the data that is used for the business to run itself, right? It's the Salesforce, the ERPs, and the commercial, the service, all of that data. That's one thing which I think traditionally companies know very well how to manage. They put it on the cloud. They use a lot of out-of-box solutions that manage it. The second type of data is really around the data that is generated from the equipment, the MR, the CTs, the X-rays that are running in the hospitals, right? These create immense amount of data. We can call it IoT data. In our world, we call it as equipment data, which is primarily very important when you are in this kind of a crisis situation. You cannot have a moment when your MR or CT or X-ray or any of those are going down. It affects how the hospital operates. It affects what service can be provided to the customer of our customers, who are the patients, right? And that's a big subset of the data. And then there is a whole dream of clinical data space, right? The data that is, and which is where most of the innovation for really helping us as human beings live longer, manage our diseases better, the clinical aspect of it, how can we make a patient experience seamless in the hospital? So the data read is very vast in the healthcare sector. There are a lot more other subset like genomics and all, which I wouldn't go to. So when you think about the infrastructure play and the vast change that happened, right? I think it happened a lot across all of these spaces, but the rate of change which happened was very different, right? Because it's very difficult from suddenly, if you have an on-prem kind of an environment, to go to cloud hosting or even eventually cloud native and take advantage of a very distributed architecture. I think so. A lot of change that happened was leveraging the legacy architecture of infrastructure, and that really was eventually ended up being the bottleneck on how these solutions can actually perform real time. Maybe it worked for smaller situations, but when you wanted to scale it across a chain of hospitals, when you wanted to scale it across, entire businesses, it became the challenge. So I think there was a lot of rethink on re-architecture that happened in all these 3 data realms at that point. And I can talk to you about the space that I manage, which is the first 2 spaces. I manage kind of the enterprise data space and the equipment data space. So we were lucky that even before COVID, we decided that, hey, if you really need to tap into where the value is between the where these two data sets come together to really provide the maximum value for our customers, which are the hospitals. It is important to be very nimble, to be very near real time. Like there's no point in telling 2 hours later that, hey, your EMR is down. You need to be able to say that immediately. You need to be able to do a lot of remote service, so that you don't really now need to send a service technician to fix the problem, right? You need to use AI and software to be able to do that. So to do all of these outcomes, when we work backwards, there is a lot of investment needed in platforming. There's a lot of investment needed in architecture, which is really about getting to high performing cloud, typically native, because a lot of native investments that cloud providers are investing in these kind of things, and we as a business can just tap into it. And then trying to really create a holistic strategic architecture that scales with that, which is what we did. We went with one of the cloud providers. So it eliminates us enterprises to be in the business of managing infrastructure, trying to understand how does it scale, but while focusing on what are the key outcomes that our business needs to provide to its customers, and really putting the data to work at the need, at the speed, at the way it needs to come together so that it can really help the customer. So I know I kind of went a little broad, but it was important to lay the context of why architecture is so central to it. Without having a right, I would say, set of design patterns of how all this will come together and scale, so that you're not running from one vendor to another vendor to another vendor to say, hey, your upgrade has to happen now, and your job becomes all infrastructure. But as a data leader, you can actually focus on generating data outcomes for your customer. I think having our architecture, investing in it, having a strategy, partnering with those who are really good at it, than you trying to solve all the problems yourself. And then you really focusing on the outcome that you need to achieve, which eventually big driver is cloud, big driver is architecture, and how do you really join all that? I think that's something that we were able to start on the journey. We've seen a lot of success with that. But we are still, just starting. This is a long journey. We have a long way to go. And eventually, right, all these 3 data sets need to come together for true patient experience, moving from hospital experience to patient experience. And that's kind of where we're headed.
Thank you, Asha. That's a really good points, and I think there are some really good crucial eggs down there. I mean, nice thoughts down there, which we will touch upon and we will expand later. But I would like to move to Simon. Simon, I'd like to hear from your perspective. Now, you have companies like Asha's GE Healthcare who are rethinking their data architecture. Accenture is obviously probably working with you on a lot of other use cases where people are changing their architecture. People not necessarily think about the infrastructure, but that's where you're coming from. So I'd like to hear from your side, what are the demands where people reshift their thinking, rethink the architecture? How is, like, for instance, Equinix, or from a solution vendor perspective, you're making yourself more agile to the needs?
Sure. Well, thanks, Winston, for inviting me here today. Certainly, for us, the sheer volume of data being handled by organizations just continues to scale. Asha mentioned that the impacts in healthcare, and certainly our own study, Equinix carries out an annual global interconnection index survey. We've found that APAC-based organizations are growing their data consumption and transmission at a compounded annual rate of about 40%, which is huge. And this requires very careful architecture strategy to be able to support that amount of traffic and the increased both generation of the data and the consumption of it. And a part of those strategies is developing an edge strategy so that you're not carrying all the data from source to a central location for processing. That's really expensive, it's very high latency, and it's not efficient. And so companies are coming to us talking about how can they expand from centralized architectures to, for want of a better term, mesh. So they deploy footprints closer to where the data is generated and where it's also consumed. And a part of those footprints functions is for the collection of data, for initial filtering of data, so that you're only getting, for want of a better term, the wheat from the chaff, and initial processing so that you're only transiting useful data that has meaning and value to the core business. And then also making sure that the compute to do those functions is located where the data is, both being generated, but more where it's being consumed. So you're not incurring the latency, which brings a really poor user experience, but also the expensive transit costs. And we've mentioned egress fees there from cloud providers. So another element that's arisen from that is that the cost has really become a forefront for organizations now. 12 months ago when we were, or even more when we were in the COVID times, people were just deploying, like spin up new instances of this, deploy that. Now, everyone's having to run a ruler over what their monthly bills are. And some of them are not liking what they see. Some workloads aren't as efficient in the cloud as they are in an on-prem service. And so that's causing people to take a look and go, is our current architecture really the right one for that workload and for our stakeholders? And then again, we've had a number of public security incidents around the globe in the last couple of years, and consumers are becoming a lot more aware of what data they're surrendering to organizations, and they're also having much higher expectations of the custodialship of that data for those organizations. And woe betide you if one of these incidents happens to your organization and you're found to have lax protocols around the custodialship of that data.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, that's really good points. Asha, sorry for keeping your hand up there for so long. You must be really tired, but yeah, you wanted to ask or add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a point, which based on what Simon just said, actually a couple of them, right? I think the first thing which he very rightly said, especially when you are in the business of data with respect to edge, I think what you transfer from the edge to our central processing, I think it is very, very critical, the timeliness of it and the volume of it, because that architecture that you define can have a huge cost impact on how your overall cost is in your ecosystem. The other thing, the reality of the world we live in, Winston, is that we have a lot of legacy systems which probably are not going to go away for next 10, 15 years, right? So how do you integrate that with modern systems using, data mesh, data fabric, those kind of concepts, rather than thinking that, hey, we will beat all this modernization to happen, that they probably never going to come, and still create customer value, customer revenue, customer outcome. I think that's true test of how good your architecture is. And again, healthcare industry is highly governed. There's a lot of regulations. So again, in those areas, you also need, when you think about cloud providers and cloud and all of that hosting, you need to also understand a lot of security related and compliance related aspect of the provider, because otherwise you may go on a journey where eventually you will figure out that you'll have to change your cloud provider. So I think based on what Simon just explained, I think these are some of the stuff I see in my world, which is totally related to what he was just alluding to.
Thank you, Asha. And I think one of the, I personally think the shortage or the lack of talent will be one reason why people will move away from technical debt, because they have no one there to support their legacy. But that's a different question. But Simon, I wanted to pick a point that you wanted to highlight, which I think Asha also highlighted and Satu alluded to, which is edge, because everybody's talking about edge computing solely because they want the processing power to be closer to where the data is going to be consumed, as you mentioned. And this goes to the way we are applying things like machine learning and the way we are consuming machine learning, and it's just going to get more and more fragmented, as you call it, and you need an architecture like an edge architecture to keep it all together. But for a company moving to an edge architecture or adopting an edge computing platform, what is the first and most important consideration that you will ask them to think about, probably sleep over and come the next day and then answer?
I think it's, for us, we always try and understand why a customer is coming to us, because they might have a preconceived solution to a problem. And if we get too busy in fulfilling that solution, we might miss out on more appropriate ways of addressing the business problem. So we really try to dive into what is at the root of what they're asking us about. And then if that is encompassing an edge solution, then what's the definition of edge for that organization? For many organizations, edge might just mean a country. You know, instead of backhauling all the traffic back to the US from Australia, simply putting a footprint in Australia might be edge enough for that organization. For others who are in the the connected car industry, edge might have to be on the cell tower. So, talking about how the business problem relates to the solution is the most important element of what our group does when engaging with a customer.
Thank you, Simon. And Sethu, I'm sure you'll be working with customers to figure out what is the best architectures and what is the infrastructure that needs to support that architecture. Edge is one of those things. But what are your advice? What are the things that you usually will ask customers to think about closely before they move to a different architecture? Or maybe relook at their current one and say, there's really nothing wrong with it. You just need to improve on it.
Yeah, so as Simon said, it's all based on the customer problem that we are trying to solve here, and what is the customer wanting to achieve, and what is not happening with the current architecture that they want to achieve by modifying that architecture. Like Asha said and Simon said, there are multiple reasons here. Like if you are in the healthcare industry, real time, or in the connected car industry, then real time data analytics becomes very critical. So if the current architecture is all centralized in the data center or on one particular cloud provider, transporting the data from those user monitoring devices deployed in hospitals, and then finding out the patient is having a heart attack, or symptoms of attack after 5 minutes of the data getting collected does not make any sense to the patient or to the doctor who is administering the patient. And similarly in the car. So it all depends on that, and that's how we go about it. But it is very easy to say, okay, you need to have an edge architecture, or with the edge architecture comes the facts like how do you then modernize your data architecture to adopt either the mesh or fabric or all these new evolving things. But some of the challenges we highlight to the customer is all this architecture. One needs to look at what is the kind of network bandwidth that you are going to consume, because the more the data is getting created and more you are filtering it and bringing it back into your central processing centers, the bandwidth becomes crucial. So you need to have some amount of processing and cleansing of the data at the edge where it is getting generated, so that you only bring, as Asha said, only bring the relevant data into your cloud or the central database. That is one. Second is we need to understand all these devices at the edge. Many of them tends to be very limited in the compute power and storage that it provides. So there is only so much you can do on the edge, and then you need to bring to somewhere, may not be to your central database. So that is where companies like Equinix provides, edge servers that are hosted in the, somewhere close to the wherever the data is getting generated, not at the cell site, but maybe in a data center close that we can bring. The other two key factors is once you are outside your perimeter of your cloud landing zone or your data center, your security becomes very vulnerable, because now you don't control that security to the extent of your perimeter, you're outside. So how do you then manage the security of this data that you're capturing at the edge? Because there is data privacy issues, sovereignty issue, GDPR compliance, etc., etc. And the fourth key aspect is the access of this data. Who are able to access this data? How do you control that? Because edge devices, who can come in, and we are seeing these areas are becoming very vulnerable for enterprises with hackers, because they are trying to hack into this data at the edge. With more and more getting generated and being profiled there, it becomes much easier for them to target. So these are some of the considerations we discuss and whiteboard with the customers to define how their new architecture of the infrastructure should look like and what is right for their use case. Winston.
I'd just like to highlight Thank you, Setu. And I'd like to highlight to everyone that, look, you can join this discussion. Please do use the Q&A button, send in your questions. We are happy to take on those questions, and I also point it to the right panelist who can actually answer and add their wisdom. But Setu, I just wanted to add one point. When you're talking to customers, people, it's very nice to talk about good architectures, look at how data can flow better and how the environment, the company can move forward with better, faster decision making, and maybe business speeds can be a lot faster. But then once they start operating that architecture, people talk about egress costs and FinOps and how expensive everything suddenly became. And they were looking at, hey, but the legacy architecture had a certain budget, and now in terms of blowing it, and maybe I might not have a job. So how do you put that right into the discussion? And I wanted to get your consulting, wear your consulting hat for this one, because I wanted to see how far ahead that we should be talking about cost optimization in a discussion like this, or is it a killer when you talk about cost optimization, when you talk about innovation?
Yeah, so there are two factors to this, like for example, on the cost optimization, with adopting a different architecture, it is not just architecture is one piece of the puzzle, which is your technology. Yeah? The other two are your processes and your people. So these two also go hand in hand. If you are not willing to change the way you do things and you just adopt a new technology and then make that technology work like what you were doing in your legacy, naturally the costs are going to go up and shoot your budget. So when you bring in a new technology, where is that it can optimize and where it can bring in efficiency? Like we discuss about like doing data processing at the edge. A lot of the things can be automated using AI, ML scripts to cleanse the data, make sense of infer the data to whatever inference they want to gather to see which data is useful, etc. So we try to look at the cost perspective of one is adopting the technology, but with that technology, where are the where does it bring efficiencies? Where are the current processes that we can improve in the value chain so that they don't have to go through those processes now that they have a new technology and new capability that can cut short that process, the time to and effort required to do whatever they were doing earlier in terms of how they were doing. So it is a balancing act, Vincent. And secondly, yes, the cost could go up, but then it is also the ROI that we can generate. Yeah? If it can generate additional revenue for you, if it can generate better customer satisfaction, if it can generate better user experience, if it can really drive innovation. So those are how we quantify as a consultants, when we go in. That is how we quantify to say, I'm not saying that, we can always quantify and say, okay, you adopt this new technology and it is going to be cheaper than what you're doing. It may not be true, yeah. But then all these other factors, when you build a business case, proves to justify that investment, and then we monitor, and if we are the executing partner for the client, we have a 360-degree value framework that Accenture adopts to ensure that whatever we committed in the business case is adhered to, and we are generating those outcomes that we promised to the client. If that answers, and I'm sure Asha and Simon can also pitch into this very crucial question that you're asking based on their experience.
Asha, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you covered most of it, Setu. As somebody who sits within an organization, right, I see all of this. So, I would just lay it out like a 5-step process on how you could do architectural discussions with the business, because I do that quite often. So typically this would happen like either, they would go to a conference or they'll hear about all these great technology that is going to help business, generate tons of revenue and all of that, and then we will be told, hey, why are we not doing this kind of stuff? And we said, hey, probably, we were also trying to do similar things. So I think then the question translates to why are we doing this, right? And even if we say, okay, we want to do edge because now we will be able to gather all this data and do all these things, we have to dive into, so what kind of use cases are going to that be? Are they going to happen now, or are they going to happen 5 years from now? Because it's entire infrastructure vamp that needs to happen, starting from changing the sensor to how you design your machine, how you design your MRCTs, what kind of standards you have in that, to how you then put it in, the edge, then from the edge, what goes to the central processing, then what kind of things you store, you create analytics, you generate digital models, you do that, sell back to the customer, and they are actually willing to pay for it. better, So if you can't do this whole life cycle, maybe in 2-3 years, then your ROI statement is kind of blown off to what Setu said, and you need to rethink. Right? So that maybe identifying those use cases, that is so very critical, because everything looks like, hey, you put a lot of data in there, now you're going to have tons of revenue. Doesn't really happen. And between all this, there is also the cultural transformation of how your business actually is going to operate needs to be built in. Because if the business is still going to operate like before, both your customers' business and your business, this transformation is not going to happen. No ROI is really going to get generated, right? So a lot of discussions have to happen as to, hey, we need to drive this as a holistic program within the company, not like a technology program. I think that's probably the most important thing. Then you need to do that whole ROI thing. You need to agree that, probably first 3 years, you're not going to see any revenue come out of this. It's probably going to be after that. And sometimes even more so. So do you want to do a big bang, do it across the world everywhere, or you want to look at one business segment, one region where there is a lot of appetite for this from the customers? And then invest in that and then take it through this whole process and then scale it. So that's another boardroom discussion, boardroom kind of decision making that happens. Now, once all these done, we technologists are very good at doing this. Okay, so we will get excited. We'll buy the latest sensors. We'll found best connectivity solutions. We connected all these. We got our data. And then now the way service operates has to change, right? Service is a business, because end of the day, when you are digitizing all this, you can do remote service, right? That's where the revenue is going to come from for the company. And that's where the customer, the business, the hospitals are going to see the benefit. So which means that how we business leaders think about how do we do remote service has to change. It needs to be a metric that, hey, because we did all this, now we're going to do 80% remote service, right? And that has to be a target people need to have. And, that's the outcome. I mean, these are just incidental things, all the cloud and everything is just incidental to it. And if that cannot happen, I think then that's when disillusionment, if the trough of disillusionment in the hype cycle that gets kicked in. And then, there's like, oh, it's because we don't know how to do it. They know how to do it. All of those questions come in. But I think if you have great partnership and if you have constant communication and it has to be a team sport and the folks in the driver's seat have to be business leaders. I think then this is definitely possible. I have seen this work very well. And obviously we need to have phenomenal technology teams behind it, because it's good to have all these great strategy, but if we cannot execute on it, it's just a PPT, a storytelling that really happens, right? So it's not an easy thing, and never expect to go it the way you would think it would go. But you should be prepared to have small wins. Very important, like what Setu said, to quantify every benefit that can be felt, which are tangible and which is non-tangible. How good a doctor feels now because he doesn't have to fill these 50 fields and he can do something better with his time. I don't know. It's not just about productivity. It's right about really how efficient the doctor can be and how better the patient experience can be. I think sometimes it's a little bit difficult to capture financially only, but end of the day, every company is a finance company. So it needs to get converted into some kind of a metric. So that is how I view it from somebody who tries to include the whole cloud architecture as part of a broader change that we organizations are trying to do, primarily in order to serve our customers better and obviously be more profitable. So that's the other side of how we would do it from an internal view.
Thanks, Asha. Simon, I want to bring you into this because, but from your perspective, Asha and Setu was talking about partnerships and creating the ecosystem. As I know, Equinix has been putting lots of resources in building the right ecosystem, and it's not about just building an ecosystem. You need to plug it into the right ecosystem, which can give you an ecosystem effect. Could you explain from your perspective, what are the lessons that you have learned in actually building this? Because Equinix has been doing this for like 10 to 15 years, this ecosystem play.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, Equinix is moving to be a more partner-oriented operation. So, and by that I mean Equinix partners who can guide customers through these kind of journeys that we've been talking about today, like Accenture, for instance. These digital transitions are hard, and as we have talked about, one one solution doesn't fit all sizes. Throwing everything in the cloud is going to bring disappointment, and keeping everything in colo is going to bring missed opportunity. So the balance is, the challenge is what's the right balance for this use case, and certainly that can mean leveraging provider partners like cloud service providers, network service providers, and as a service providers on ecosystems like ones that we curate at Equinix. So if you come to the Equinix platform, you can easily connect to business partners privately and securely via Equinix Fabric, for instance. And that allows much more agility and optionality for organizations who are wanting to experiment and try new services as they pop up. As Asha mentioned, it takes a community within the organization to make an initiative work, and bringing in the different business partners as part of your wider community is super important. So that's where partners like Accenture are important, Microsoft, Google, Oracle, Amazon are important to us as well for customers developing their edge strategy. And like I said, it really takes understanding the customer's business problem to develop an architecture that is particular to that situation to bring about the success that customers are wanting these days.
Thank you, Simon. And I'd like to, again, ask everyone online, if you have any questions, please do use the Q&A button and send those. We are happy to answer those. I have a question for Asha, and we've been talking about teams and communications between partnership. But I think one of the things actually when you're in an organization, and especially when you're running the data and analytics part of it, is when we talk about data analytics and then you have an infrastructure team, communications may not be the most synchronized, especially when you have different outcomes, different budgets, different goals, different things to look at. What's your best practice to make sure it is aligned? How do you get them, got two teams, infrastructure and data teams, to talk the same language? Do you have a platform to actually talk the same language?
Yeah, no, I think, this is not just about infrastructure and data teams. It's about everybody who's in that value chain to generate the value. Okay, but specific to the infrastructure and data teams, right? I mean, this is a little bit of culturally how we operate in our company, and, how I operate as a leader also. See, end of the day, nobody can do anything alone. I've learned that very early in my career. If you want to do large things, large operations, right? Like, just to give you statistics, right? We today there are 100,000 API calls that happen on our internal platform on a monthly basis. So infrastructure team is, if they're kind of not step in lock with me, it's never going to happen. So two things I will tell you, 2-3 things, right? The first thing is we operate in a team of teams model, where we have, we look at outcomes, and then we look at, hey, who are all the people who are responsible for outcome, irrespective of organizational structures. And, we have certain groupings like that, which help us. Really helping your infrastructure team understand what is the impact they are bringing, what is the contribution, what does it mean if certain things are down for a certain period of time, and having them being part of the wins and the losses equally when the business is being successful and losses. Because usually the infrastructure team only gets dinged, when everything is going great, nobody really is bothering about, hey, we didn't even have one outage this year. I don't think anybody is congratulating the infrastructure team that way. So making them and yourself eventual partnership where the successes and the losses are being together, we win together, we lose together. I think that helps. And for that, obviously, company culture plays a big role. And then helping them understand the impact of what any small blip is going to be, I think helps, because genuinely then people understand they're able to contribute better. I think also things will go wrong. There will be situations when things will go wrong. What is your plan when things go wrong? How do you partner? What's your mechanism for it? How do you, face an attack together, an infrastructure outage together, a data problem together? again, having plans for it, doing dry runs on it, I think that is huge, because you can't learn that when the problem actually happened. You have to be a little bit prepared for it. So that, I think, is something that we do an ongoing basis. I think that really help us to be well prepared, because problems will happen to the best of infrastructure and data teams for sure. And now I think the third component coming into this is the whole security factor, especially in our world. It's very important. So we all have to be tied on the hip when something like this happened, and what is the process we follow? How do we go after it? I think there are other things that we've done traditionally, which we continue to do, managing to SLAs and, having some kind of operational mechanisms for handshakes and all. But, those are like very non-human, I would say, kind of things you can set up. But end of the day, when a problem happens, I don't think we are still so automated that AI will solve the problem, right? So it's your human connections and how can you partner with others and solve the problem together, I think is what I have seen. And for that, it needs time to establish things when things are going well, as well as things are not going well. It cannot be just during one phase of it. That's my experience. And so far it's been good, I would say.
Thank you, Asha. And Satu, you raised your hand. You're in an unenviable position, because you're sitting in the middle of different teams within an organization while you're doing the consulting process. So how do you make sure you align the goals are right? How do you make sure that the infrastructure team is actually in line with what the business wants, and the other way around too?
Yeah, so one of the things, to answer that question where you said, there is the apps team or the data teams, and then there is the infrastructure team. One of the key concepts at Accenture that we are driving with our enterprise customer is to, relook at the way they operate their IT. Yeah? And we have this concept of the modern tech ops, what we call it, which is an integrated approach across the stack. So we say, you don't have a separate infrastructure team, you don't have a separate ops team, data team, then security team. We integrate it vertically based on either the business outcome, or we create squads, supporting a particular application, etc. So we bring this, the best practices of AI ops, DevOps, SecOps, and data ops into a integrated team, so that this team then, compromises, as Asha said, all the people with the relevant skills that is needed to deliver that. So now you are no more, saying, okay, here is a ticket I have raised to infrastructure. I'm waiting for them to, deploy the server so that I can, then deploy my, ML model and start churning some data. So that is one of the concepts that we are driving hard, and we are seeing more and more customers adopting it because they see a lot of value, and they see that, now especially with the cloud becoming pervasive, it is no more like, you having your data center with infrastructure sitting. It becomes very easy to execute these models in practicality. So I just wanted to highlight that point, and I'm sure Asha is said the same thing, but she said it from a user perspective. I'm saying it more from a consulting perspective of how we position this modern tech ops, and the view that we bring. We just flip it, rather than having layers of infrastructure, application, etc. We just flip it and say how we look at it from a business or an application or a data perspective across the stack. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it dives very nicely to the one last topic that I'm looking at, which will be talent. It's good to have a tech ops, or some people call it XOps team. It's good to have the team to talk to each other, but the talent that can actually understand both perspectives are very hard to find, or you need to train them, or maybe upskill them, or there must be a learning mindset. For maybe, Asha, you can start that discussion. Where do you find them? Are you looking in adjacent job scopes where you're actually bringing them on board and then upskilling them?
Yeah, so talent is, at the heart of everything. You can do all of this. You cannot do any of this without the right talent. So I think if in terms of any company's priority, the number one is having the right talent, right? Like most large companies, right, we operate in a heavily outsourced model. So when we look at talent, we are talking about maybe 20 to 25% of the talent sitting within our company, and then maybe 75% of the talent across partners, different types of partners. It could be cloud partners, it could be, and it's truly partnership. I would say that's kind of what I look at, how the partner teams as an extended part of my organization, right? So one thing is early on, at least to look at from my perspective, to identify what are the roles that I need within my direct organization internally, and then what are the things that I can truly leverage or partner with somebody. Maybe they're better off doing it. They have the better skill sets because that's what they specialize in, right? I think if everybody does what they are best at and it can all come together, the end goal can be much better than somebody trying to do everything themselves, right? So in that kind of a model, right, when I specifically now shift to like the talent, which is internal within the organization, I think we have two types of personas. One are more generalistic product persona. These are people who know the domain better, understand, for example, how we should be putting data to work, what kind of use cases should we be looking at, how's that going to help grow revenue and all of that. Partnered with people who are deep in technology. How do you implement a cloud native GDPR kind of thing? How do we do different VPCs? How do you optimize on cost? Because you see, the biggest thing happens when you go from on-prem to cloud, as you very well know, is that you're paying by the drink. And if you don't know how to manage your costs, that's when the whole costs are going to go north. So you need talent who are finance people, now that you have moved to the cloud, who are not going to be listening to, oh, this is great technology, but maybe it's going to cost 20 times more in your team, right? So you have to reorient your team that way. So a mix, nobody is really going to be do all of these things. People will have flavors for this. You're not going to find those unicorns, right? And also this, at least in the data cloud space, there's typically 20 to 25% attrition that happens, right? So you have to constantly lean into that as well. Partnering with universities, bringing on early career talent, developing them is something big that we run that helps us both for management kind of roles like product, as well as for technology roles. And you have to invest into the ecosystem. If you think that, hey, I am doing this for myself and I need people to stay for 10 years, you're not going to be getting the benefit. If you have to invest into the ecosystem, and then you have to take it out of the ecosystem, leveraging the partner ecosystem, leveraging other companies where you hire from. So I know this is not a straight answer to your question, but that's how I kind of look at our talent strategy. But some of the key points are really tapping into the evolving, the educational institutions. And that's where I've seen a lot of change happens, because they're not okay to work in legacy tech anymore. So whether you like it or not, they will force you to change, even if you do not want to change. Obviously, you have to balance it with, ROI and all of that.
Thank you, Asha. Setu, you're sitting from a consultancy point of view. So how are you actually working with this lack of talent? I mean, everybody is facing shortages of talent, and everybody is trying to find new ways on actually solving this. But how are you working with this challenge while trying to keep the organization moving forward?
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest challenge we have as a services or consulting and services organization, because we cannot go and partner with another services organization to bring in the talent that, like Asha said, we have to build our own talent and our skills and be differentiated in the marketplace. So and if you see today, I don't know if people realize we are close to 800,000 plus people across the globe organization, so quite large. And we grow at a rate of 10 to 12% every year. So we are adding close to 100,000 people into our talent pool. And we, as you know, of course, in the market, you can, to some extent, acquire talent, from other organizations, people who want to, move, change, etc. But that forms a very small percentage. We are going out in the market and identifying, fresh grads from engineering schools and grooming them. And we have something called as our tech school, where we bring them in and we run them through a 2-year program where they, come in for short stints for 6 weeks. I think they go through a orientation and initial, technology skills they gather to start being part of the projects as a low junior team. And then every 3 months they come. So in a period of 2 years, we build them in particular skill area. Now, previously, this tech school was focusing totally on, bringing talent from engineering schools with the IT background. But now we are finding that is also limited. So now we have extended it to bringing talent from non-IT background, and then, come up with program of how do we introduce them to the concepts of IT and build them. We similarly have, programs to bring workforce back into, people back into the workforce. So we have one initiative on diversity where we are trying to go after, women professionals who would have taken a break from the career to focus on the children and family, etc. And now at a stage, where the children have gone to universities, colleges, they're sitting at home, not knowing what to do. So we have a program specifically to address and attract those people back into the talent pool and then grooming. So multiple approaches, Winston. There's no one straight answer. And of course, then looking at centers where we have talent. So previously, for us in Asia Pac, we used to heavily depend on India, Philippines, China as our key talent. But now we have also opened centers in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and now into Vietnam, because these are the new markets where a lot of young graduates are graduating in these fields and they are looking for opportunities. So yeah, so it is diversifying across the geographic locations, then looking at bringing people from various backgrounds and profiles into the talent, and then we invest a lot in building that talent and hopefully able to retain them to be productive for us and our customers. Yeah.
Thank you, Setu. Let's ask Simon to look at the talent questions and also what we have spoken so far. What are your thoughts? Simon, could you share with us as your last thoughts?
Sure. Thanks, Winston. Certainly, Equinix has not been immune to the talent crunch either. So in my group, the technical skill set is actually not too challenging to hire for, but being able to tell a technical story to a customer and align it with their business requirements, that's a very challenging skill set that is hard to find, actually. And so as a result, we prefer to try and bring talent up from within the business and coach them as they go. But sometimes we need the skills right now, which means that we have to go to the marketplace and compete with everybody else. And often we're the beneficiary of having a well-known, really great culture at Equinix, and that will often swing the balance in our favor, which I'm very happy to be a part of that culture as well. In terms of the discussion today, I think we've articulated lots of examples of where organizations are reviewing their current cost models. They have seen the benefits of investing a lot of resources into cloud and collecting and utilizing large data sets. But while they're trimming their costs, they don't trim their expectations of the business outcomes. So we've got to work out how we can do the same or more with less. And they've seen that the cloud brings great benefits like the ability to have market agility, scaling, a financial transition from CapEx to OpEx, but it can be yielding surprisingly high costs. I think Asha talked about how some costs incurred in the cloud that were never there in a co-located facility because it was just a cross-connect from a switch into a machine. There was no data transfer. So companies are now taking a look at, okay, here's our architecture. What can we do to optimize that? And what is the best architecture to deliver on our business goals from here on? And in the last presentation, my colleague Thomas Lee talked about some of the services that Equinix provides to help customers in those transitions. Software-defined networking so that you can spin up connectivity and resize it as the business demands. It's supported by Network Edge to provide virtualized networking services at the edge, and then having that complemented by our bare metal compute known as Equinix Metal, which allows customers to deploy compute services in around the world without having to send physical hardware there. And so I guess I'll sum all that up by saying it really depends on the customer demand, the workloads that those customers are utilizing, and how they're consumed as to what the right architecture is to support your needs. And if your organization would like to find out how my team and Equinix and our partners like Accenture can bring efficiencies, to your architecture or workloads, please reach out to me.
Thank you, Simon. And thank you, Asha and Sathu. Thanks for all your wisdom and your examples and your insights. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure the audience appreciates it as well. At this moment, I'll hand over to our CEO, Jonathan Bigelow, for his closing remarks and his exciting messages. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks for that, Winston. I don't know about how exciting it is, but very, very much thank you for hosting this, Winston, and thanks for the valuable inputs from Asha, Sethu, and Simon as well. Very useful ideas on how important data architecture is to data journeys and solving business challenges and helping to create even new business models. And interesting to see some of the specific examples of where they're being used in healthcare, discussion on finance and other areas, and also to understand the bandwidth and cost issues related to data in the cloud, something that people weren't discussing a couple of years ago, but now they are. And also, thanks again to Anna, Thomas, Sunil, and Anshu for the earlier discussion on the infrastructure for app modernization. Cloud automation and hybrid cloud are seeing huge jumps in Asia and globally. And a great reminder from Anshu that you need to see how your apps perform on the cloud and not just on premise if you really want to understand, how they're working for your organization. I hope you enjoyed the Modernization of Digital Cores. This is our 8th installment of our CDOTrends Digi-Live series, where we delve deeply into a specific technology and topic around digital tech and data initiatives. Thanks so much to our enabling partner, Equinix, for making this event possible. And there's some supporting on the panel from their partners, Accenture and Orange Business. If you have further questions about application modernization or data architecture, Equinix would be happy to share their valuable experience in this area. They've got decades of experience in their team. This concludes our session for today, but I would like to ask you to do 2 things before you leave, okay? Please use the QR code here to register for some of our upcoming events. We've got the digital, just next month in March, we've got the Digital CMO Hong Kong event on March 22, another March 28 Digi-Live event on simplifying digital and data, and then our first annual Reader's Choice Awards. That's going to be a live event in Singapore on March 30th. Our flagship event, next screen. Yeah, next screen. Is our May 3, 6th annual Digital and Data Officer Asia Summit that will be held in Singapore as a live event, and then an upcoming event on security that got mentioned in both sessions today, how important it's become as well. And that'll be a Digi-Live session on the 15th of June. So please use the QR codes, please have colleagues, friends access and register. And I would again like to thank you for your time today. One last item is just this next slide, just if you can download or just use the QR code and answer, I think there are 5 questions about today's event. We'll use it to improve our future events. So yes, if you could take a moment to just look at that. Thank you again for joining today. We really do hope to see you next time. Again, the next Digi-Live will be March 28. And then we have a number of live events, including our May 3 CDO Asia Summit that's happening live in Singapore. Thanks again for your time, and please do join us next time. Goodbye.